Hey guys, this video picks up right where the first one left off, so if you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link for the description below, and let's jump into it. Okay, so that pretty much covers the basics of resource management, and now I want to get into what I'm calling base management for the purposes of this video. So what the heck do I mean by that, and why is it important? Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Supreme Commander, and while it might not look like it in this video, there could be a battle over here, there could be a naval battle over here, you could be trying to build this experimental, you could be trying to build power, upgrading master extractors, building radar. There's a lot happening. So how do you go about managing all this and not get overwhelmed? Part of it comes with experience, yes, but one thing I like to do that helps me is to treat what I'm building as projects. And what I mean by that is, for instance, this commander I told to build this experimental factory. So one thing I would do in an actual game is I would hotkey this commander 1, so control 1 did that, and then I can undo that at any time by just clicking on nothing and pressing control 1, and it takes the 1 off of him, but I'll leave it on for now. So control 1, and now if I press 1, it brings him up. So now, no matter where I am on the map, say I'm looking at something over here, if I double click the 1 key, it'll take me right to him, and I can tell him to keep assisting this factory, and that would be one project. Now say I want to do a couple of other projects, like maybe I want to see a radar, because as you'll very quickly notice, the map is not normally all revealed like this. I can pick some engineer, toggle him as number 2, and then I can send this guy off to build a radar somewhere on the front lines, or maybe in the back if it's a powerful one. And maybe I want to build some shielding on my base. I could select another engineer, toggle him as 3, and then I can go try to build a shield that might block some of these factories or whatever you need. What's really nice about this method, and you will absolutely see this in games, is that you can assist these engineers with other T1 engineers, also called build capacity. They don't have to be T1, but they're just really cheap and easy to make. So a lot of the times you'll see really good players just go and spam out like 20 plus engineers. And then with all these engineers, they'll help build all these projects. And before I learned about this trick, it was just an absolute nightmare trying to remember which freaking engineer was doing what. And so with this, if I want this guy to help number 3, I can help him. Or if I wanted him to help number 2, it's as easy as just finding the hotkey, or, double clicking the hotkey and doing like so. Another benefit of this method is you'll see your idle engineers. So as you see here, it just popped up just now, 1 idle engineer. If you right click him, it'll take you right to it. And this is what I expected. I expected it to be this one guy that was working on this project, and now that I see he's finished, he pops up. If you'll also notice, this little guy here does not pop up. It still shows there's 1 idle engineer. And if you'll also notice, these guys don't pop up either, because I told them to assist this factory. And now if I build something, they'll automatically just kind of start helping themselves. But again, super helpful to know when your project's finished. So now I know this radar is finished and he can start something else, like maybe going and making this mass extractor, for instance. This other engineer will automatically follow him. Super nice way to keep track of projects and to easily assist them with build capacity. Now, there's 2 more things I want to mention on this topic of base management. One is, do not be afraid to tell your guys to just go off somewhere and do something. At first, when I started playing, the map just looks huge to me, and I have no idea how long it'll take to do something, so I would kind of just not do it. I really encourage you, don't have that mindset. If you think a factory would be really good here, and you'll get this with time, the kind of feeling, just grab a couple engineers and just go tell them to do it. You can do it with these guys. You could grab one of these guys and go tell him to get all these mass extractors. And by the way, I held shift and then I held shift and clicked another one. That's how I was able to queue multiple. But yeah, just please go tell them to do projects and don't worry about when they get there, because you'll know when they finish by this little idle engineers thing. Ideally, you never want to have an idle engineer. You always want to be telling it to do something. So that way you can always be making the most use out of your engineers. Now, the second one is to not be afraid of pausing projects or even canceling units that are partly through if you need a different unit for any reason. And what I mean by this is if I destroy this really good factory by pressing Control K, you can see my power absolutely plummet. And when I power stall, it also decreases the efficiency of mass extractors. So you saw I was getting 56 or so, and now I'm getting a pathetic amount of mass, all because I'm energy stalling. So this is absolutely urgent. You need to do something. With the economic overlay on, you can come in, see these guys are taking up a crazy amount of power. Just go ahead and hit them pause. And then let's try to figure out who else is doing stuff. Looks like these guys are doing stuff. We can pause them. Pause this guy. And of course, now that we have shield generators and other buildings occasionally take up power themselves, so we can pause this guy, or at least make it stop trying to produce its shield. And then keep looking around. It looks like this radar is taking up another 150. Turn this radar off, so if we were on multiplayer, we'd no longer be able to see enemy signatures. And with that, we're just barely positive. If this was happening in multiplayer, like if my power got sniped or something, the very first thing I would do is grab one of my engineer project leaders, you guys, and try to get my power situation back under control. So I grab him, do that, unpause all these guys. And again, this is just kind of getting used to base management. They'll try to finish whatever they started working on, even though they're technically assisting this guy. So no problem, we just grab them and we reassign them to this guy. That will make them bail on their current project and go help out again. And something pretty important that I forgot to mention in the original recording of this video is to try and not overflow on mass. You can overflow on power no problem because you can make infinite power, but since mass is limited, if you're wasting some and your opponent is not wasting some, like if you both have equally exactly 50 of the map, but you're wasting half their mass by just overflowing, and it's not going into storage, it's just poofing into thin air, and your opponent is putting it all into tanks, your opponent will come out on top. So that begs the question, what do I do with this mass and how do I not overflow with it? Well, that's actually a pretty easy answer. You can, 1, build more factories. If you can sustain it while not being negative, this is definitely the way to go in early game. You can, 2, tech up. Higher tech things cost more mass to build, naturally. And just the process of upgrading is also pretty mass intensive, if you see right here. And lastly, if you're in the late stages of the game, to spend more mass, you simply just tack on a bunch of engineers to help it, and that will not only spend your mass, but everything you're building will build a lot faster as a result. And one more core game mechanic that kind of ties together both resource management and base management is reclaim. Reclaim is essential. If I hold Control and Shift, you'll see some numbers pop up. These numbers are the reclaim value of whatever these rocks are, whatever these trees and bushes are. And this, let's just take note of this one rock, 175. If I come over here and I look at my T1 factory, and I look at a tank, if you see over here on the left, it costs 56 total mass, making it 4 mass a second. So this one rock will get me several tanks on the battlefield right away. Whereas all my T1 extractors at this point, assuming it's the beginning of the game, they're only making 2 mass a second. So 175 is absolutely critical. That can win you a battle over maybe some choke point like this with a few extra tanks. If there's not a battle brewing anytime soon, you still want to reclaim, because you can put that reclaim into things like upgrading mass extractors to make even more. Not only this, but after a battle, destroyed tanks or any unit will leave a certain amount of mass. I believe it's 75%, and correct me if I'm wrong. They can also be blown up to give a little bit less, like if an artillery shell lands, but let me just go ahead and speed this up. So this one tank, they cost 56 mass. If I blow this guy up, unfortunately, sorry, tank, 2, 1, and I press Control Shift, 45 mass. That's the majority of mass that I can get back from it. So while this one tank might not be that big a deal, after battles, if a big battle goes on up here or something, there's going to be dozens potentially of tanks right there, which you can immediately recycle into your economy to either rebuild those tanks right away and then some with the enemy's mass as well, or you can put that into a tech upgrade or whatever you like. So reclaim is very, very important. So how then does one go about reclaiming? Well, it's super easy. Anything with an engineering suite, your commander, these engineers of any tech, super easy. You just hover over anything with mass on it, even these trees that don't show up when I press Control Shift, even those trees have some amount of mass. So all I would do is just scroll in and right click. If I wanted to get more than one with one engineer, I could hold Shift and then tell him to move over here, maybe get a couple of these trees, maybe get this rock, and then go over here and wait for further orders. Alternatively, you can tell your engineers to attack move. You can technically do it with patrol as well. They functionally are the same, but patrol is endless, so they'll never come back up here if they've scooped up all the mass in a certain area. So after a battle or something, or if there's just an engineer that maybe he came over here and he built this mass extractor, now you don't know what to do with him, never hurts to just send him on an attack move across the map. And yeah, he'll probably die, but as long as he gets some mass, he'll have paid for himself. And it's always good to be doing stuff with your engineers. You never want an idle one. So again, if there is someone up here who is done with what they were doing, just send them on an attack move, and hopefully they'll scoop up a bit of mass for you along the way. And guys, I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to go over in this video. There is so much more I want to cover, but I think this video will already be long enough, so I'm just going to call it here. If you thought the video was helpful, please share it with any newbies you know, or maybe leave a like to help the algorithm. And if you have noticed my ranking up here, I'm not excellent, I'm not a pro, but I just wanted to pass along some tips and tricks that I learned along the way. But yeah guys, that pretty much wraps it up. If you are an absolute beginner, leave a comment down below about how you found out about this decade-plus old game. I'd be really interested to know. In my case, I started maybe a year or two ago, and I learned about it from the Guile casts. So Guile, if you're watching, huge shout out. Your community awareness casts are doing their job excellently. But yeah guys, that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for more to come.